Our guest for today is Dr. Sujata Kelkar Shetty. Her accolades are many. She's a trained biological scientist. She has written over 100 articles for her Mint column on health and wellness. She's also the author of the popular book, 99 Not Out, Your Guide to a Long and Healthy Life, where she lays out certain key principles and shows us how wellness is a key and important aspect of our life, and how health is not something that we should only think and care about when we fall sick. But today's discussion is going to be on a slightly tangential topic where we will discuss certain key ideas from her recently published book, The Resilience Masterclass, A Parent's Guide to Teenage Mental Health and Emotional Wellbeing. Welcome, Sujata.
Thank you so much, Pavithra. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, sure. I'm really glad that we are doing this today because this is a topic that I deeply care about and I have spent a lot of time reflecting on as well. Mental health and emotional health is something that touches each of us, some directly, some indirectly through someone we care about. And it is something that is thankfully getting more and more attraction these days. But it could also be hard to understand, hard to talk about, and even harder to navigate effectively. That is why I'm very thankful that we are doing this episode, and it is very important because it opens up a conversation as to what our young adults are experiencing these days and how as adults we can help them and support them. And after all, if we have to take advantage of the demographic dividend of India with our young population and get them ready to contribute to the labor force effectively, these are key aspects of it.
100%.
Correct.
Yes.
So one anecdote that you mentioned early on in the book that really stood out to me, and it's something that possibly everybody who listens to this will relate to, is the moment when every parent says to the child that you have everything that we did not have as we were growing up. You lead a very comfortable life. We have given you everything that you need. So what are you really unhappy about, right? And of course, this comes from a place of utmost care. And at the core of it is the belief that I have to give my kid everything that I did not have. But what gets often overlooked in that is the aspect that what the children need changes and evolves with every generation. And I often think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs in this context, that once the foundational levels of needs like your food, clothing, shelter and safety are met, it's only natural for individuals, especially young adults, to aspire and seek the next levels of social connection, belonging, self-esteem and self-actualization. And recognizing that these are also needs, I think, is the first step. So just with that context, let's dive into the ideas and explore what you mentioned in your book.
Sure.
So to kick us off, I want to start by asking you, mental health is important for each one of us. Why focus particularly on teenagers? What was the reason for you to focus on this aspect?
Yes. So I think the first thing to remember is that teenage health in general, has not been addressed adequately globally. Okay. And teenagers are different. They're different physically from children and adults. They're going through a growth spurt. They're going through hormonal changes that are very distinct from what children go through. And adults obviously have developed completely. From a brain perspective, we'll get into this, I hope, later. Their brains are developing and developing very differently and maximally compared to children. Adult brains are fully formed. In the context of cognitive development, therefore, children are still developing their ability to reason, problem solve, think rationally. Teenagers take it to a different level. If you've ever had an argument with a teenager, an intellectual argument, they're incredibly good at putting ideas together and critical thinking. Adults have developed their reasoning skills. Now, when it comes to psychological and social development, children are still dependent on their immediate circle, and their close family friends. Teenagers want to go out. They want to now meet more people. They depend more on their peers for advice than their parents. And it's a natural transition that they're making. Adults are very, very sort of have a very complex experience socially. They have their inner circle, they have their outer circle, they have their professional relationships, they have their social relationships, and they learn to juggle everything, right? Now with adolescents, their experience of emotions is also different compared to children. Children, when it comes to emotions, they experience a wide range of emotions and do have trouble managing them. But in adolescence, they experience heightened emotions. They have mood swings. It's very much part of the way their brain is developing, right? And giving them a greater capacity for both joy and sadness, which is why you see activists coming out. Remember yourself when you were a teen, right? It's very natural to be that way. While adults have hopefully learned to manage their emotions better because they're out in the real world. They've got to learn to do that if they want to be successful, right? So, given all of these things, and well-being is generally very important. It's very important for coping with stress. It's very important for doing well in any field, whether it is academic or your extracurriculars or sports. For any kind of for any kind of performance, it's very important. It's also important for your physical health. You can't be mentally well without being physically well. Given that background, when we look at adolescent mental well-being, the thing about adolescent mental well-being is similar to the fact that it hasn't been addressed globally. When we think of physical and mental hasn't been either.
Right.
Yeah. And adolescents are uniquely vulnerable to stress because their brains are still developing, right? They're uniquely vulnerable to stress. They are not able to manage stress as quickly. They are also very impulsive because their brains are still developing. Their decision making isn't great. So while they may be able to argue with you very confidently about the current state of the world, if you ask them to make a decision for their own lives, their impulse takes over. And that impulse is emotional because their emotional centers are very, very strong, right? And we should get into that. But so they are vulnerable. They're uniquely vulnerable. At the same time, they want to go out into the world, which is natural for them. So it's almost, for a parent, they have to recognize it's like when they had their toddlers, right? The toddlers were exploring and they had to watch them. Teenagers are a bit like that. You have to watch them, but you also have to let them go because that's part of it's essential for their growth and development. What's happened in today's world is that we have kept them protected more than ever before. And they are now, married to their devices. And these devices do not provide them with the real world experiences they need to build their resilience or their ability to handle life. Because to handle life's challenges, you need mental well-being, you need mental resilience. How do you develop it? You develop it by experiences. And all they're experiencing is this. They're not experiencing life. And if they're not experiencing life, how are they going to learn? So it's kind of a bit of a conundrum because the world is not as safe as it used to be. Neither is this phone and what we can access with it. But we need to give them opportunities to explore. And we need to understand them better, right? I think that we'll talk about that, I'm sure, about how parents need to sort of come in and play the role that they need to play. And I think this generation needs it more than my generation perhaps did, right?
Right.
And I think this goes back to what you said about parents saying, but we've given everything to our children. I think the mistake we're making when we talk like that is that the world that we grew up in no longer exists. The world has changed dramatically, right? It's not the same. And it's changed very quickly. And it's caused a cognitive and an intellectual and an emotional overload on our brains and our children's brains. And we need to be cognizant of it.
Right. It's also very uncertain times. Most of them have gone through the COVID phase.
Yes.
They've gone through the wars. Now they've gone through whatever's happening in the US.
Exactly. The pandemic, the wars are still continuing now with the new presidency and all the uncertainties that that's bringing up, it's a lot to handle. And unfortunately, they are aware of everything.
Right.
We were aware of nothing.
Yeah,
You know,
that's true.
my big problem at 15 was some boy was not talking to me, or my bicycle had stopped, working properly. That was it. There was nothing else. Or the exam,
Right.
because obviously academic performance was very important in the family. But to me now, those problems seem so small compared to what my children are, as teens, are contending with, because they're aware. And the environment, it's a deep cause of concern for this generation, and naturally so.
Mm.
And they blame us again, and their forefathers, and again, naturally so. So it's a dystopian world in many ways that they've inherited, compared to the utopia that we imagined that we lived in, and they don't have that bubble,
Right.
right?
Right.
They don't have that bubble.
So you mentioned that certain aspects of their brain are not fully developed yet, and it's still growing.
Yeah.
And while it has its downsides, it also has a lot of positives to it, because nurturing that will help them reap some long-term benefits.
Yes.
And often we see that as young adults, most of us are deeply passionate about things.
Yes.
We want to go and achieve. We are ambitious.
Yeah.
But that sort of does die down with time. It could be because you did not know what life was going to throw at you, or
Yes.
it could be that you were always told that, okay, this is too ambitious, this is a fairy tale world. So
Yes.
can we get into those aspects of the brain which is responsible for certain attributes, and how to nurture those abilities?
For sure, for sure. I think this is the most fascinating part as far as I'm concerned, because I didn't know till I started writing this book how different adolescent brains are compared to children's brains. So their prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for processing, planning, impulse control, reasoning, the part of the brain that makes us human and so highly intelligent in the animal world, that's still developing. Right? It's not fully developed. So this causes a reduced inhibition, more impulsive behavior. Then when it comes to myelination, which is like the insulation for your nerve fibers, that's still building. What that means is that their ability to process information quickly is still developing. Their ability to make decisions quickly is still developing. What we can do very easily as adults, they're still learning to do, because their brains are literally constructing that ability, right? Then synaptic pruning is happening. So this is where it becomes very important for us parents to provide our adolescents with the right kind of experiences, because pruning means the brain is letting go of the parts of it that are no longer required. And how does it decide that? Based on what's being used.
Okay.
So whether it's languages, if you want to it's still okay to explore languages. It's still a good idea to give them skills that they can build, because they can really use that time to build, and whatever they build will remain. I'm sure you remain. For me, I remember the books I read as a teenager more vividly than a lot of the stuff I've read later. It just stays with you, right? So it's important that we give them experiences that are enriching. Just as this is that time of vulnerability. So if you give them experiences that are not enriching, that are traumatic, that are detrimental, that's also going to impact them more. So this is why I brought up the analogy of a toddler, right? Just as you protect the toddler from sticking their finger in electrical sockets and from touching something that's too hot because they don't understand it, adolescents are like that. And toddlers too have this extraordinary thing happening in their brains, and the same with teenagers. Then their amygdala is able to process emotion in a heightened way because it's more active, right? The limbic system, which is responsible for emotions and memory, they in their case is more prominent. And what that means is this decision making is something that they get influenced by with their emotions. So their emotions influence their decision making, which again makes sense, right? The story of Romeo and Juliet, is a parody on teenagers. Parody perhaps is the wrong word because it is a tragedy at the end, but he's really making fun of how teens think. Everything is a big deal. Everything is do or die because that's how their brains are functioning. Then their reward centers are more sensitive to dopamine. This is what makes them uniquely vulnerable to these devices, right? Because dopamine is involved in us seeking more stimuli that give us rewards. And it's almost like social media was created for teenagers to get addicted to, right? So, given all of these different changes and their sleep, the last piece is the sleep piece. Melatonin gets secreted later. So they fall asleep later, which is why school timings need to be changed for teenagers. High school should start later for teenagers because they just genuinely can't sleep till 11 p.m. You think that, they're chatting with their friends, they're being lazy, they're not wanting to focus, they're wanting to rebel. It's not that. They actually don't feel sleepy till 11 p.m. So if we could just start school a little later, give them that sleep in, because their brain needs sleep to develop as well, just like children, they need the sleep, right? So we can use some of these things to their advantage to support their development. Like I talked about earlier, you can also, when we think about risk taking, they have an increased desire to take risk because of this whole dopamine sensitivity. We can expose them to healthy risk taking. What does that look like? We can expose them to outdoor activities since they have a passion. Many of them have a passion for environment. Expose them to hiking and trekking and or the rush of performing arts like theater or music. My son decided to do theater this year. He used to be a really shy kid. Right? 9th grade, he wakes up and says, "Mom, I want to do theater," because he wants to explore. Right? And it's part of how he's growing up. So they are going to change. They are going to want to try these things. They just need you to encourage them and let them. And also allow them to sleep. Sleep in on the weekends. Sleep in when they have a break. When they were children, it was easy for them to wake up at 6 or 7. Now it's harder. And it's okay. They'll revert back to being able to do it when they're adults. This is just the time they need more sleep.
I think that was great. I'm sure many teenagers will be grateful to you for saying that all out there. So I think one thing that I really liked about the book is that you mentioned that the state of calm is not something to aspire for or try to inculcate in your children. Even like you mentioned, the 11 p.m. sleep time or outdoor activities. These are things that should be thought about based on how they are going through physiological changes, and as opposed to using just a stick approach, and being more strong on them. So I guess my question is, as I was saying, the state of calm is not something to be aspired for,
right?
But rather what we should be inculcating in them is the ability to handle challenges that come in their way and face it more effectively.
Yes.
And this is that resilience approach that you keep emphasizing on.
Yes.
How do parents need to go about inculcating some of those habits in the children?
Yes. I think what's critical as a base is unconditional love, a deep connection with your children, and absolute security. Your children, your teenagers need to know that you are their safe space, no matter what, right? I've told my children, you can kill someone tomorrow, but I will be there for you, right? I mean, I'm making an extreme point, but the gentle good boys. but the point being that they need to know, and one parent,
Someone's
it doesn't have to be
corner.
two. Just one parent who gives them that unconditional support, security, and structure. There has to be some structure. So you may not have a danda, right? But a subtle danda to show that, because they then know that you care. teenagers are turning around to their parents and saying, the reason this happened to me, the reason that, I fell into this bad habit is because you just didn't ask me. You just let me do what I was doing, right? And yes, they are gruff. Yes, they're impatient with you. Yes, they are not polite to you. But you have to still keep going after them. You have to still keep asking them the questions like you would because they're your children, right? You care about them. You haven't stopped caring about them because they act like they don't care about you because that's the way they're processing the world. Doesn't mean that they aren't your children anymore. So leaving them alone in the room, not a great idea. Not engaging with them, not a great
But
idea.
that's a very thin line, right? You also need to make them feel they have their space. You also need to not let them alone because you need to be there and keep a watch. So that's a
it is a
intricate balance.
dance.
Yeah.
It is a dance. But I think the dance has to come from a place of respect.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's important.
The respect for that individual.
Mm-hmm.
This is somebody now that you're responsible for growing into a grounded, responsible adult in society who makes the most of the talents that they were born with in a practical way, right? Follow your passion. Business isn't what I'm talking about, but in a practical way, whatever is possible within the family, right? We all have to earn our livings. At the same time, there are certain talents that we have. Maybe we can balance it out. Maybe we can dance on the weekends. Maybe we can, but find a way to help our children become the adults that they can be, right? And for that respect of the individual, respecting their intellectual process, their ability to make decisions, because we need to empower them. We don't want to do things for them anymore. That's how they will become responsible adults. Right. So we need to let them go for sure. We need to respect their space for sure. But within understanding that independence comes with responsibility and that they need to know that they can come to you. So just telling them that they can come to you is not enough. They need to know, they need to understand that they can come to you. And that is going to happen when you see them coming to you. So if you don't see them coming to you, there is a problem.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean there isn't a problem because they have issues. Every 2-3 days, something is happening. It may not be happening to them. It may be happening to their friends. And like I said earlier, every issue is a big issue in their heads. So you've got to support them and you've got to be there with them through that journey, because when you're with them through that journey, then they respond to you. And it starts in childhood, right? It doesn't mean you can't start later. But it's very important to be that parent right from the beginning, because then when you hit their teens, they're ready to communicate with you because they've always communicated with you. And unless something changes in your life, right? Maybe work gets busy or something happens, because life happens, they are not, they will continue to engage with you. But they're also thinking like adults now. So if they feel like you are busy and if they're good and if they've been raised by you to be polite and to be kind, they may not come to you with their problem because they might think that they're troubling you. So then it becomes important to remind them that no matter what, their problems are of significance to you, however small it might be in their heads, which means, again, communicating with them. So it's a constant process. I'm not saying that it never ends. I think being a parent is a job that you, once you have that child, you have that responsibility throughout their lives, but it's incredibly fulfilling. And teens are really wonderful to engage with because they really are thinking all the time and they are processing stuff and they're noticing things. And the way they notice things is different. As adults, we get jaded. We're doing the same thing every day. But they see everything with fresh eyes and they have things to contribute to your home life, to your work life. My oldest son was 15 when he came up with the title of my first book. Yeah, 99 Not Out. The original title was 100 Not Out.
Okay.
And then I found out that there was a Australian book by the same title of a man who had slept with 100 or so women in 2 years. And I thought, oh my God, I so do not want this book title. And I completely freaked out. and I couldn't sleep because I'm horrible at titling anything. And my oldest son at that time, he was just casually sitting on the sofa, and I was looking worried. I said, "Why are you so worried?" I said, "This is what's happened." He said, "Why didn't you call it 99 Not Out?" I said, "That's actually a better title.
Yeah.
Thank you so much." And and that was it. So they have contributions to make if you let them.
Right. And the communication both ways, they can help you as well, and you can help them.
Yes,
Right.
in a very concrete way.
Mm.
And my 15-year-old today is very supportive of me, sort of spreading my wings a little bit more now that both the kids are older, and he gives me very sensible suggestions on how I can move forward. And he does that with sensitivity. He does that with kindness. So it's possible, it's all possible. They're incredible. It's like you've got this clay in front of you and you can really help to mold it. But the decision lies with the parents, with the caregivers, with the coaches, with the teachers. We're all playing a role.
Right.
Um,
So I want to touch upon a little bit on the habits for resilience, because the resilience theme is something that I think of as a key idea in your book.
Yeah.
And a recent sort of epiphany for me also has been, I've started going for runs in the morning, and
Fantastic.
I first used to think of it as a purely physical fitness activity, and I would think ticking off 3 days in a week is great. And similar to do with my food and diet, it used to be on schedule. Am I getting the right macros in it? I track them and so on. But when I really started enjoying it, or rather started doing it without seeing it as a chore, is when I actually saw it helping in just how easily it helps me lead my life, how mentally I am able to feel active, more productive, more energetic.
Absolutely.
Everything just feels good about your day.
Yeah.
And that sort of is like a merging of the physical aspects of and the mental aspects together. They are really not as distinct as we make them out to be.
Yes.
So I just wanted to let you talk about some of the key habits that is easier cultivated younger,
Yes.
so that as we grow as adults, we already have it in them, and we don't have to think about starting to eat right or starting to work out at 40, 45.
Right. I couldn't agree with you more, right? That feeling that you get from a good run stays with you through the day. And it really helps your body in ways that you begin to notice when you do it consistently. So in adolescence is a key time for us to think of inculcating those habits. And when I think of the 3 resilience boosters, and resilience being our ability to deal with life, whatever life throws at us, our ability to play with it, deal with it, overcome the challenges that come our way, that's resilience, right? And it's like you were talking about it, it's something you can build. And you found yourself building it when you were running. So the same thing holds true for our teens. Movement is very important, and movement in whichever way they will take to it, right? So some of us get stuck on a particular sport because we played it. Some of us get stuck on maybe dance because that's what we thought would be good for our children. I think allowing them to explore, but being consistent with movement, 4 to 5 times a week. Running is fabulous because it also gives you these feel-good hormones. But it could be weight training. And there's nothing wrong with weight training in your teams. That's a myth. Swimming is fantastic. Dancing, if that's something that they enjoy, is great. But they need to do it consistently. They need to do it with discipline. And they themselves will find the value in it, just as you found the value in it. I too can't go without exercise. I find, the quality of my life is so different when I'm doing my yoga and weight training. And when I say quality of life, I'm actually talking about the environment in my mind.
Right.
How I feel in my head, how clear-headed I am, how grounded I feel, how much I can get done. All of that is dependent on my exercise routine. So going back to the kids, whatever they want to do, but making sure they do it and turning it into something that they enjoy so that they will then take it up on their own. Because you can't really force them at this stage. When it comes to nutrition, the same rules apply. We all know what we are supposed to do, right? But as a family, we have to do it, because if we do it, our children will follow. So we have to be the leaders. And the same holds for the exercise piece as well. If they see us exercising, they know that's the way to go, right? And then the sleep bit, as I mentioned earlier, it's very important that they get their sleep, just as it was important when they were children. So making sure that devices are kept outside and doing it as a family. We keep all our phones and our laptops and iPads outside the room. We charge them outside the rooms so that everyone does the same thing. When it comes to nutrition, we all eat the same food at home. There's no junk in the house, right? So that immediately eliminates the possibility of eating it. Can our children go and buy it outside? For sure they can, but it limits it, right? Us not eating sweet during the week, eating it on weekends as a rule, it becomes like a rule for the family. Does that mean that our children are not eating chocolate otherwise? Of course they are. But if you are doing it, they know what the baseline is, right? They know that this is what they need to aspire to. And often they themselves realize, because their brains are extraordinary. They're noticing everything. So if you leave them be, they figure these things out, and they figure out what's good for them and what's not. But like you said, it is a fine balance. But if there are two people in the world who can really understand the children, it's the parents. So it's not rocket science. It's much harder for me to understand somebody else's child than for them to understand their own child. There is a gut feeling about your children. Particularly mums or the primary caregivers know what's going on. So I think with each of these, it's doing it yourself, being the sort of leader in these actions was going to make a huge difference to the resilience of your teens, and ironically to yours as well. So if you develop the habit first, as opposed to trying to get them to do it, if you develop it first,
they'll watch and learn.
They will watch, and they will naturally follow you, and they will more likely continue to do it forever. So, and what they do will change. Sometime it might be swimming, sometime it might be something else. But it's like eating. They've got to exercise. And the eating also has to be as clean as possible, because it really impacts how you feel. Just as much as the exercise does, the eating also impacts how you feel. And they are going to crave sugar and junk during this, stressful episodes, because remember, they're not able to manage stress as well. So you've got to help them with that, right? And the key is to just not keep it at home. So at least they can't find it, right? With my older son, when he just finished his board exam, so he sort of gave himself a little bit of a break. He's a student athlete, so he eats really clean. But then during his exam, he said, Mama, I'm going to allow myself some sugar. So it was a decision, right? He took it in his mind and he would eat it while he was studying. And then when he was done again, it cleared out. But at that time, we were getting these yummy, like chocolate chip cookies from Swiggy. All that was happening. But then it stopped. So it's quite remarkable how they take charge of their lives if you give them the right foundation.
So I think you mentioned a little bit about the device. So of course, that's the next question. That's our topic. We cannot not talk about when you're talking about teenage health. So on social media and access to multiple streaming platforms right now, everybody sees it as a negative aspect. And like you said, the dopamine that you get out of that is real, right? And it's not just for them, it's even for us. I think that one like just gives you enough dopamine more than, and it's an easy way to get it than your 1 hour of physical workout or reading a book. So is it all bad? Or how can, and clearly it's not easy for parents to not allow their children to use it, because
Yeah.
if you are not allowing, your peer is going to be using it, and then that sort of also creates, oh, my parents are not letting me, that
Yeah.
feeling. So what are some of the positives that could come out of it, or help your kids use it in a positive way?
Yeah, social media is really interesting, right? I think as long as the children recognize that it is a source of this dopamine fix, and it has no role to play except the role that you give it. So give it a specific role. If you have to be on social media for a specific reason, use it for that purpose, and use it only for that purpose, and keep your scrolling to a minimum, right? So be cognizant about the time that you're spending on it. And it's unfortunately, teens are vulnerable to social media. That's just the way that social media is designed. And ideally, they shouldn't be on it till they're 16. They shouldn't have these phones till they're 16, 15, 16. If they must have these phones, then teaching them the pitfalls that are naturally part of holding these devices in their hands has to be explained to them. And controls have to be in place for them like they are for you. So you have to do as you say, right? And so that they do as you would like them to do. And that requires some intentionality on your part as well. So like I was telling you, I deleted Instagram from my phone yesterday, and I use it for a lot of things, right? I use it for some shopping. I use it for learning about other thought leaders in my space. I use it for news, but mostly I'm wasting time on it, if I'm honest, right? And I'm doing this experiment to see with a friend of mine, to see if we can, how we are. I think we'll be fine. She said, let's check up in a month. So I said, okay. But it's easy for me. For my children, my older one is not on Insta at all. He's not on social media at all. The younger one is on it, but it's very interesting. That generation doesn't really get on it publicly. They use it as a messaging service. They have private groups. So as long as they get those 10 likes, they're like, okay, all my friends saw my photographs or whatever. So it's actually quite nice. It's like a little community. And so there isn't that. There is still a lot happening, but they're very careful. They think it's cringe to announce to the
fully
world.
expose yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, what is
That's
this? Like,
interesting.
It's a different generation. So I feel hopeful.
Yeah.
And if we can get them to understand that discipline is really important, disciplining their mind, I think they'll be fine. But it's the children who are already struggling who get sucked in. So children who are going through a stressful episode, children who are already going through some issues, right? They're the ones who get sucked in. Children who have engaged lives. So children whose parents are involved enough to know that their children are struggling. I won't blame parents. Sometimes parents just don't know that their children are struggling. But assuming they know they're struggling, assuming that they are engaged with them, and children are, and these teens have things to do that engage them outside of just schoolwork, right? So it becomes really important today for us to teach our young people to know what to do with their free time. Because if it's not digital media, it is the OTT platforms. It's very easy for us to spend our free time doing these things, right? For us adults too. So helping our children finding hobbies that engage them, that give them the dopamine they seek, but over a longer period, but then the hard work is satisfying.
Yes.
Right? Whether it's reading a book or baking a cake or gardening or singing or drawing, all the creative pursuits, or helping somebody, right? Going to a like an animal welfare place and helping animals, if that's something that you enjoy, or talking to children, teaching young children something, getting them involved in doing things for other people, getting them involved in having hobbies that truly engage them. And it really could be anything, but something that inspires them. Then they're not going to go after this, because this is not as real as that. That dopamine hit somehow feels more meaningful. No, but they have to experience that. And if they only have this, they're not going to experience that.
Yeah.
And if they get addicted to this, then we're in trouble, right? So all of this, the idea of this book is to get us to start thinking about inculcating behavior so that we can prevent mental illness, because it's very much there, right? And our children are suffering, and they're suffering in greater and greater degree. The good news is that they can recover. The good news is their brains can become more resilient, even if they have suffered from a mental illness, but it becomes that much harder. Just like for anything. Physically, if you break a leg now, if I ask you to run a marathon, you're going to have to first do your physiotherapy, first get the cast and the physiotherapy, and then eventually start running.
So you said how sometimes parents don't know that the children are suffering. In your work, in your research, what do you think are some of the ways or symptoms that parents can seek out or look for in the children that would sort of give them the idea, okay, they are not okay, and so that they can help them better?
Yeah. I think instinct really matters here. But the obvious things are like changes in eating.
Okay.
They're eating too much or eating too little. Changes in their sleep. Sleeping too much, sleeping too little. If they're sad all the time. They've lost interest in the activities that they used to normally enjoy. Right? This is why it's important to have those activities to begin with. Yeah. Then irritability, having difficulty concentrating, right? They're withdrawn socially from their friends. And if they're engaging in risky behaviors, so obviously if they've started getting into drugs and drinking too much, if, alcohol is something that you have permitted, but now it's going overboard. Remember, risk-taking is something that they are prone to, but suddenly they're doing it even more, right? These are all suggestions that there is an imbalance and that you need to look into it. Basically, one caregiver really does need to be on it. There's just no escaping that. Or both caregivers, both parents need to sort of take turns at keeping a pulse. Just like you did when they were little. There's really no difference. It's actually the middle school years that you get a breathing space. And again, it's boom. So, yeah.
Right. Okay, I think my final question is for adults. One is for parents themselves, because like you said, it's as hectic as it was when they were kids or toddlers. So how do parents make sure that they are not burning themselves up in the process? That's one part of my question. The second part of my question is slightly beyond the scope of your book, but I think, as you mentioned earlier when we started the conversation, is the awareness of this probably was not there when we were younger, more so for you than for me. And many of us haven't really grown up in the ideal home environment where our parents knew all this even existed. And I think this does impact us when we grow up as adults.
Sure.
And we are all at least the mid-20s, early 30s, peak of productive adult life. But we see it affecting the way we navigate relationship, our career prospects, how our relationship is with our colleagues, how do we even go about finding a partner, and just to get the best version of ourselves even at our workplace.
Yes.
So are we a lost cause? How do we build the resilience? Because we are just starting to unpack these factors.
Yes.
So those are the two parts of my question.
Yes. No, I think the first thing to remember is that I firmly believe that each generation that comes is more capable than the last. So if you haven't learned them earlier, don't worry, you can learn them now. That commitment to treating your mind and body like a temple is really important, right? To sort of be aware that everything that is happening around you is impacting you. So choosing the right experiences is important. And then the resilience boosting fuel that we've talked about,
Right.
those 3 resilience boosters are resilience boosters for all of us. As parents, I have to focus on it. As a young adult, you have to focus on it, and the teen has to focus on it. Why did I make it so important for teenagers? Is because they are laying the foundation for their life. So if they have that sorted, then they're already ready, right, for the next phase. That was certainly not the case in my time, right? And it wasn't in yours, and that's okay, right? It's perfectly fine. We can still learn. Our brain is plastic for a much longer time than was previously thought, right? Neural networks are getting created. The plasticity of the brain is such that you can learn new things. It just takes us longer. Teens, it can happen like this. For adults, it takes longer. Is it impossible? Not at all. And as an adult, you have the maturity to know that you need to do it, right? You have the maturity, your brain is fully developed. So the teenagers need an adult to help them. As a young adult, you can help yourself because your brain is now ready to manage these things. So it's okay if you haven't done it before, you can do it now. But the same 3 rules or the same 3 boosters apply. So you need to think about your sleep, you need to think about what you eat, and you need to think about movement, and you need to do it consistently.
Right.
It's the small, it's small steps, but they need to be taken every day. And resilience is about building capacity, right? So building the capacity for life. That's what we're doing here. Whether for a young adult or for a teenager, the idea is to help them build their capacity for life, because life is going to bring challenges. That is definite, right? Nobody's life is easy, and that's the nature of life. So we have to prepare them. They shouldn't feel like they have to protect themselves from things. This new generation, there's been a different way of thinking of mental health. And we need to realize that life is going to keep throwing things at us, and we want to expand to meet it. We don't want to contract. We want to be able to handle it and move forward and build the best version of ourselves. You can't build the best version of yourself by trying to protect yourself from life.
Right. Thanks, Sujata. This is really helpful. I think I often hear people my age or a little bit older than me say, nobody told us this would happen. Nobody prepared us for this. This is coming. But I think this sort of gives the hope that, okay, you know it now. How do you go about now being resilient and facing these challenges head on?
Yeah.
So thank you so much for this. This is really helpful.
You're most welcome.
I hope everybody reads the book. It's a great one.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.